Right now in the studio is Carolina Coral. I welcome the viewers of Frida. Let's move on to the news. 3 people were injured as a result of Russian drone strikes on the Synelnykivskyi district of the Dnipropetrovsk region on the night of November 27th. According to acting head of the Regional Military Administration, Vladislav Ivanenko, the attack caused a store, an extension to a house, a garage, and cars to catch fire. One house was destroyed. A kindergarten and infrastructure were also damaged. In addition, Russian occupiers shelled Nikopol with artillery. On the night of November 27th, the Russian army attacked with strike drones. There was also a fire in the Odesa region. There is partial destruction of civilian infrastructure objects. This was reported by the head of the Regional Military Administration, Ole Keeper. According to him, the attack damaged the facades of 2 residential buildings. A horse riding club and a gas station building were also affected. According to preliminary information, there were no casualties. The Russian troops also shelled the shipyard district of Kherson last night. Apartment buildings were damaged and a fire broke out on a gas pipeline. This was reported by the head of the Kherson City Military Administration, Yaroslav Shenko. In addition, over the past day, a man was injured due to a drone drop. Other drone drops caused destruction to a private house, a car, and a minibus. A Russian FPV drone also attacked a civilian car. A 35-year-old woman and her 6-year-old son were killed. Due to the enemy shelling of residential neighborhoods, 2 more civilians were injured. An apartment building was damaged. After 9 days fighting for her life in the hospital, a 12-year-old girl passed away. She was injured as a result of the Russian missile strike on Ternopil on November 19th. Her mother died at that time, and her sister is still in the hospital. This was reported by the mayor of Ternopil, Serhiy Nebel. As a result, the number of people killed by the Russian shelling has risen to 35. 7 of them are children. Every year, the number of civilian casualties of the war in Ukraine continues to grow. According to the UN, in 2025, the number increased by a quarter compared to the same period last year. The number of wounded has increased by 75%. According to the UN Human Rights Monitoring Mission, the increase in deaths in major cities is linked to a rise in long-range strikes. For example, in Kiev, the number of civilian casualties in the first 10 months of this year was almost 4 times higher than for the entire year of 2024. Russia is also destroying residential buildings, civilian infrastructure, and Ukraine's energy system. Each new attack further increases the psychological pressure on the population, the UN monitoring mission concluded. Due to Russian strikes, emergency power outage schedules have been introduced in the Sumy, Poltava, and Kharkiv regions. At the same time, rolling blackouts are in effect throughout Ukraine. This was reported by the Ministry of Energy of Ukraine. During the day, the Russians struck energy facilities in several regions of the country. Emergency repair work is still ongoing. Specialists are working around the clock to restore power as quickly as possible, of course. As part of the drone coalition, Latvia has delivered 12,000 drones to Ukraine. This was stated by Foreign Minister Andriy Baluk at a meeting with his Latvian counterpart by Babraje in Kiev on November 27th. The parties discussed increasing the pace of production and delivery of UAVs for next year. In turn, the Latvian foreign minister assured Kyiv of continued support. She also reminded that at the beginning of November, Latvia handed over 21 Patria armored personnel carriers to Ukraine. In total, Ukraine received all 42 promised 6x6 armored vehicles this year.
Thank you for the annual assistance amounting to a quarter of Latvia's GDP, which over the years has already reached more than 1.6%. This includes weapons, ammunition, military training, financial support, and the drone coalition, within which Latvia delivered 12,000 drones this year.
We must be sure that Ukraine can defend itself, which is why more than $500 million has been allocated for defense and for protecting the energy sector. Next year, we will allocate 15 million euros to the drone coalition to ensure sufficient capability, as well as to bring the latest scientific and innovative research to the battlefield. 2 days ago, we allocated an additional 5 million euros to provide other opportunities and extra resources for the rehabilitation of Ukrainian soldiers in the country.
Ukraine and the United Kingdom have signed a licensing agreement for the production of Octopus interceptor drones. This was announced by Defense Minister Denis Shmyhal, who emphasized that Ukraine, together with its partners, is developing air defense capabilities. This agreement will allow Ukrainian interceptors to be produced in the United Kingdom, Shmyhal stated. The minister also added that this type of drone has already proven its effectiveness in combating Russian Shaheds. There are plans for mass production of the interceptors with volumes that could reach several thousand per month. The manufactured equipment will be delivered to Ukraine to strengthen the protection of our skies. Denis Shmyhal, Minister of Defense of Ukraine, on Telegram. Ukrainian defense forces have managed to cut off the Russians from supplies in Kupyansk. In addition, enemy units that entered the city have found themselves trapped in its northern districts. This was reported by Viktor Cherhubov, spokesperson for the Joint Forces Group. The number of Russians in the city is gradually decreasing, and reinforcements are not arriving as they are being destroyed even before reaching the city. According to Cherhubov, the enemy is trying to act actively not inside the city itself, but around it. There, they are attempting to outflank the Ukrainian defense forces.
The Russians' announcements of victory turned out to be premature. They carried out active offensive operations at the beginning of November. During these offensive actions, they began fighting in the city center and tried to break through to the south. And it seemed that the city was almost taken. They started reporting this first through Gerasimov and then through Putin. But the situation in the city changed not in their favor. At the moment, the situation is a stalemate for them. And that's ironic because Putin has already made a statement about the encirclement of Ukrainian battalions. But they can't confirm this with anything. Viktor Trigubov, spokesperson for the Joint Forces Grouping, on the air of the marathon.
United News. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine recorded 213 combat clashes on the front line. Over the past day, the Russian army has intensified assaults in several directions. In particular, we're talking about the Hulayapol direction. There, Ukrainian defenders stopped 22 enemy attacks. Another 31 were stopped in the Kostiantinovka direction. The hottest spots on the front are the Pokrovsk direction. There, the Russians tried to break through the Ukrainian defenses 57 times. And the Lyman direction. There, the Russians stormed Ukrainian positions 44 times. Since the start of the full-scale invasion, Russian army losses have exceeded 1,169,000 soldiers. These figures were announced by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Just in the past day, the defense forces eliminated 1,140 Russian occupiers. A tank, 3 armored vehicles, 21 artillery systems, a multiple launch rocket system, air defense equipment, and 110 units of enemy automotive and special equipment were also destroyed. In a unique operation for a Ukrainian defender, doctors at the Live Unbroken Center managed to save a serviceman's limb from amputation. He suffered a severe injury while carrying out a combat mission in the Kursk direction. Watch the story to learn about the fighter's journey and his path to recovery.
39-year-old Andriy Baluk is from the Lviv region and worked as a builder before the war. In 2022, when Russia launched its full-scale invasion, he went to the military enlistment office twice. But due to his lack of experience, he was sent home. 2 years later, the man was finally mobilized. He joined the 95th Air Assault Brigade and served in the Kursk direction. Last fall, Andriy took part in evacuating wounded comrades.
That day, it was already our 4th day out there. We were evacuating our comrades, both the fallen and the wounded, sometimes for up to 8 kilometers. 4 kilometers on their territory and 4 on ours. We dragged them to the evacuation point, carrying them on stretchers, so we could lay them down and pull them along.
When there were about 300 meters left to the evacuation point, a Russian drone struck Andriy. The man suffered severe leg injuries.
When I was wounded, I didn't feel any pain at all. All I saw was my toes hanging and my leg almost stripped of flesh. I was 90% sure they would amputate it. But somehow, by some miracle, our medic saved me.
In Kiev, Andriy underwent 16 surgeries, and then here in Lviv, orthopedic trauma surgeons took on the most difficult task, restoring the lost part of the bone, and they managed to avoid amputating his leg.
Together with the orthopedic and trauma specialists at our center, we managed to save the leg and give Andrei the chance to walk again. We replaced a large bone defect, which was about 8 centimeters. Using the masculine technique with Andriy's own bone from both iliac wings, this will allow him to start walking again in the near future.
Such injuries are a challenge for Ukrainian trauma surgeons because before 2022, wounds with complications like Andriy's were extremely rare in civilian practice, doctors say.
Before the war, we practically never encountered such defects in civilian trauma cases. That is, after 2022, we started facing these kinds of complex wounds and injuries for the first time. Now, unfortunately, there are a lot of such injuries, and we have to find a way to deal with it.
Right now, Andriy's in rehabilitation. Every day he trains, tries to walk several kilometers, and works to restore his leg function enough to return to service in the Ukrainian armed forces.
Let's discuss the next topic in more detail. If, during peace negotiations, Russia is allowed to even slightly redraw Ukraine's borders, sooner or later it will do the same with Lithuania's territory. This was stated by Lithuania's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Kęstutis Budrys. It is extremely important to use all available leverage in negotiations for a just peace in Ukraine. For Europe, these are the frozen Russian assets, Ukraine's EU membership, and the establishment of a special tribunal. If we allow the borders to be redrawn in any way, even in the smallest form, they'll come to us with markers and a map, and then with tanks to change them somewhere else. We cannot allow any de jure or de facto legitimization of the occupied territories. Kęstutis Budrys, Lithuania's Minister of Defense, in a piece for Delphi. Only Ukraine has the right to determine the terms of a just peace with Russia. This was stated by Canada's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Anita Anand. She noted that Canada has always supported Ukraine regarding its territorial integrity. Also, according to the diplomat, next week, the issue of peace in Ukraine will be actively discussed during the meeting of NATO foreign ministers in Brussels.
Canada supports Ukraine and its territorial integrity, but the final decision regarding Ukraine rests solely with Ukraine, including matters of territorial integrity. We strive to support Ukraine, and we accept its decisions in the areas of rule of law, peace, and security. Anita Anand, Canada's Minister of Foreign Affairs, during a conversation with journalists.
Ukraine and the United States are preparing for a meeting of their negotiating teams in the near future. The main goal, of course, is to discuss the peace plan. This was reported by Foreign Minister Andriy Baluk during a meeting with his Latvian counterpart, Baiba Braje. He noted that Kyiv is expecting concrete results. He added that the Ukrainian side is interested in contacts at the highest level. Meetings between President Volodymyr Zelensky and U.S. President Donald Trump.
We welcome President Trump's efforts aimed at ending Russia's war against Ukraine. We are grateful to our European partners for supporting our efforts in this direction. The Ukrainian negotiating team is at work. They are in contact with the American team. In the near future, we can certainly expect further contacts to discuss concrete steps on how to bring a just peace closer for Ukraine.
We fully support the United States' efforts to achieve peace, and of course, we support Ukraine in its pursuit to secure its future and ensure the preservation of full sovereignty, democracy, strong institutions, and strong armed forces.
Meanwhile, against the backdrop of incidents involving Russian drones, Europe has begun to consider how it might respond to Russia's hybrid attacks. This is reported by Politico, and according to the publication's sources, the ideas range from conducting joint cyber attacks to unexpected military exercises on the border under NATO leadership. Let me remind you, in recent months, Russian drones have flown over Poland and Romania. In addition, drones of unknown origin have caused chaos at airports, on military bases in several other European countries. There have also been incidents involving GPS jamming, fighter jets intruding on warships, as well as sabotage on the Polish railway, which is used to deliver military aid to Ukraine. According to French analysts, more than 100 acts of sabotage have been carried out this year, which are being linked to Moscow.
Subscribe to The Gaze and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukraine and all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.